was the problem, as you said.
Okay, yeah. I'm so sorry. So I'll keep pasting it so that I had to go back. Even on Saya's page, we had the wrong link. Imagine all these days.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't do Saya's. Okay, for those who are joining, Saya is my younger brother and my sidekick in this gig. He's actually flying to Minnesota to do his other heart thing, which is preaching. So if you're in Minnesota, but they look him up. He usually does like a whole story of how we came to this topic, but I'm not gonna do that because I'm terrible at. I used to be number last in English. Yes, Joanne. Yeah. So welcome all. This month is dedicated to trauma. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we discussed school-induced trauma. So these children grow up and they get into workplaces. So we are gonna talk about work-induced trauma. And our panelists today are, I will let them introduce themselves. Joanne, Tom, if you're an American, that's Tom, but it's Tom, and Joan, but it's Joanne, and Rahab, but Rahab, I give up. And Posa, the moderator. So we will start with, of course, definition. And so I'll ask Rahab to do the definition because this is your part. So introduce yourself to us and then and I'm sorry, I think I sent you the wrong link, Paul Esana. So introduce yourself to us and introduce the topic to us. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening for those who are in East Africa, and I guess good morning for the ones who are using Pacific time. My name is Rahab Nuna, and I'm a psychologist, also a certified and trained mediator. And when Posta was giving out the topics and asked us to speak about it, I think I was leaning toward work-induced trauma because I feel like it's something that we need to talk about, especially now that we have different generations working in the same organization, and you can clearly see how different generations are able to work and be productive in the workplace. So I think what I'd like to start with is
did we lose her?
Yeah.
I lost her.
Oh.
Okay. Her connection. And what if you're in Kenya and your connection is shaky, as I make fun of my siblings, your 1G network, you can get off camera. We don't have to see you. So Joanne, do you want to take over the definition for now so that we don't leave people hanging?
Okay, so my name is Joanne Mwangi. I am a life coach and I specialize, or my niche is inner child healing. That is what I call my retirement plan. So I do that on the side. My real job is a HR practitioner in the US. I implement HR software. However, I do a lot of different consulting aspects of HR, and therefore workplace trauma is very near and dear to my heart from both aspects of my life. The definition of workplace trauma for me would be what happens to a person when they experience something that is we call traumatic. And trauma for me is what happens to you, what happens in you when something bad happens to you. All right. So like if you're in a war, what happens in your body, what happens in your mind, what happens in your soul, body, mind, and soul. So trauma to me is what happens in us when something bad happens around us or in our environment. So workplace trauma for me is what are the things that happen in the workplace that cause us to be dysregulated, our nervous system to be dysregulated, or that causes stress, that causes anxiety, that causes all sorts of dysfunction in the workplace. So that's my short version. And I think Rehab is back.
Okay, yeah, Rehab, go ahead if you can, and you don't have to put on your video because we understand. We have seen you.
Apologies.
It's okay.
I would definitely define it as probably a syndrome of emotional exhaustion that's usually just characterized by a sense of low personal accomplishment that usually leads to decreased efficiency at work or productivity at work. But the key thing is that it's usually marked by emotional exhaustion. And then this can now lead to physical symptoms like what you were talking about. It can lead to anxiety, it can lead to panic attacks, it can lead to palpitations, and in some cases, even chest pain and headaches.
Okay, and still on the mental side aspect, that's Joanne and Rehab. So what counts as trauma? And we know there are traumatic jobs. There are jobs like in healthcare, which are just traumatic, police work and all that. That's not what we're talking about. That's rather obvious. But what counts as trauma in workplace? And Joanne, you can go ahead.
So one of the biggest causes of trauma that is never or rarely spoken about in workplaces, in regards to workplace trauma, is microaggressions. And microaggressions are little things that happen every day that create an environment, a workplace environment that is hostile for a person. So it could be sexual harassment, it could be gossip, whereby you can see that people in the workplace are talking about you, but you don't know what they're saying. It could be aggressions from the leaders. It could be being asked to do things that are against your moral standards or your value systems, like taking bribes or bribing vendors or lying about the numbers of the company, like a company is performing well when it's really truly not performing well, or lying about or pretending or hiding behaviors that are harmful to other people. All those can create that trauma, because at the end of the day, how you're feeling in your body from neck down, which is that anxiety, whether it's heart palpitations, whether it's you're feeling discomfort, whether you're having, a lot of people end up having like physical illness, and they tend to think it's based off of things that are happening on the outside, but it could be work related. So if you find yourself getting sick on Sunday nights, you're having stomach aches, you're having headaches, unexplained headaches. Those kinds of things are a result of workplace trauma. And it could also be other things in your life, but in the workplace, if you have a supervisor or a manager who is a bully, who does not respect you as a human being, or you're also one of those people who are called empathetic or highly sensitive people. So how another person is being treated also affects you, can be impact on you as a human being in a workplace that is toxic, which creates then trauma in a person. So that's my explanation on that question.
Rehab, do you want to add on that, like the same question I asked Joanne?
I think what I'd add is also the organizational culture or the organizational structure, or the organization as a collective also can be a cause of work-induced trauma, because sometimes the collective affects the individual. So if you're working in a dysfunctional organization or in a dysfunctional workplace, then that will affect you as an individual, because we're talking about things like lack of communication. You are supposed to do a certain task, it was not communicated to you perhaps in due time, and then you get hit for it for not performing the task as you should have. And I think also one of the other major causes of work-induced trauma can be lack of control. You know, you're in an organization where you feel like your voice is never heard. You're not able to influence decisions at whatever level that you're working on, and this will definitely affect your job performance, and it will also affect how you show up in the workplace, because if you constantly know you're not in control, then you slowly also start pulling back, and you slowly start having learned helplessness and hopelessness to some extent, because you know regardless of what you say, then it has no weight. And I think that's also a very major cause of work-induced trauma.
Okay, HR hat. This is Joanne, my gosh, on both sides. Tom, let's go to you.
Let Tom go. Let Tom go.
Let's go.
We've talked too much.
Yeah, let's. Tom, is this as in your training and in your work as a HR professional, is work-induced trauma a thing? Do you understand what it is?
Hi, thanks, boss.
Oh gosh, and please introduce yourself. You are mute. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so my name is Tom Arodi, and I'm a HR practitioner in Kenya, based in Nairobi. I've been in the HR practice for quite a while, but currently a recruiter. Now, I would say that many of us HRs in practice are very much aware of what work-induced trauma is. And like Joanne has well described some of them, most of us are aware, and currently there are a lot of measures that HRs are putting in place through the agencies to help the staff members or the team members to adapt to the challenges that come with these workplace traumas. We do also have workplace policies, including even legislations that prohibit some of the causes of workplace trauma. The Employment Act in Kenya, for example, prohibits sexual harassment, prescribes how you should manage it, what policies you need to outline as an agency towards protecting your team members from such kind of attacks. I see currently there's also a trend to make sure that the workplace is friendly and is free of bullying and harassment, bullying generally, because bullying also can come from your colleagues, just like the school. You see, Joanne said at the beginning that we have bullies that take place, bullying that takes place at our formative stages as kids. This bullying doesn't stop simply because we are now adults at the workplace. We still have colleagues at the workplace who can still bully you. That can be your own colleagues at the same level, your managers, or even guys who are lower tiers behind you. So we are, I would say, on behalf of a lot of Kenyan HRs, that we are much alive to these challenges that come as a result of this bullying and harassment.
And so from your end, how are you able to recognize that someone is undergoing workplace trauma, or the work environment is traumatic to the employees and the employer?
Well, there's several signs that not only the HR needs to see, but also you as a colleague can see in your team members, and that indicate that they could be undergoing some trauma either at the workplace or even outside of the workplace. Remember, the specialists, the psychologists, Joanne and Rehab, have also indicated that some of these trauma can be caused by events that are outside of the workplace. But since you come to work, then they manifest themselves while you're in the office. You could have people throwing tantrums in the office they are really not, you can't understand the triggers when you've asked a simple question and you have someone blowing their top beyond your comprehension. You can have some of your colleagues crying or sulking. For example, you can get your colleague in the kitchen crying. You can have excessive absenteeism, just like when you are kids or you have kids who are being bullied in school, you find them creating some excuses not to be at school. It's the same thing that you have with adults at the workplace, because if people are feeling bullied or harassed or suffer trauma, they will not be very comfortable in that environment, and they would end up having absenteeism that is not well explained. You have these sicknesses, for example. I like making a joke that one of the biggest signs for me, I say it as a joke, is when you have team members reporting that they have a stomachache once a week or something like that. Many times, even your kids can tell you they have stomachache. There's very little you can do to tell that they actually do have, because it doesn't come with a fever or something like that. So these kind of scenarios can demonstrate that there is your colleague or team member is suffering workplace trauma. That can also come in the form of lateness. You also have errors or unsatisfactory work quality amongst your team members who have been doing better way before. And so the main thing is about being observant as a manager and also as a colleague, and you needed to be able to reach out to these guys to help them either open up or drive them towards solutions that can help them get better. So there are lots of signs, and I could speak about them for quite a long time. That also includes poor personal hygiene. For example, you have this colleague who has really been doing well, and all of a sudden they are so shabby, they are unkempt, they have some funny smells and all that. Those can also be scenarios that are arising from workplace trauma. So I'll stop at that, and then we continue as other questions come. Thank you.
Okay, Joanne, is your HR hat itching to add more?
The other thing I think I would say that is very prevalent in terms of as a result of workplace trauma, and workplace trauma, I guess we want to say, would more than likely occur in toxic work environments. So if, as Rahab said, if a company culture is toxic, you will see more of these things happening. So attrition whereby the highest performers are leaving the company. That's a big telltale sign that there is possibly workplace trauma going on. And because it is not something that is spoken about very frequently or very openly, people will just leave. And people don't necessarily leave the company. People leave their coworkers, and people leave bad bosses. So if you're a boss and your employees are leaving, more than likely you need to check yourself. It's not because the company is not a good company. It's not because the pay is not good. It's most of the time, it is because you're a bad boss, and you're more than likely creating a toxic or hostile work environment for your people.
Okay, and Rahab, I don't think clients, patients on our end come and say, I have workplace trauma. How do you determine that perhaps these symptoms you're seeing are related to workplace trauma? In short, what shows up on your end? And I know we've touched a bit about it, like palpitations, anxiety. So how are you able to deduce that this is workplace trauma and not something else?
Oh, okay. Usually there's assessment tools that we'll be able to administer. There's assessment tools that we can ask the patients to self-administer, and one of them is the Maslach burnout inventory. Because what happens is work-induced trauma usually has the same symptoms as burnout or chronic stress. So this is an employee who used to perform very well, who had little or no professional mistakes, and now they're reporting more of that. They have reduced attention at work. There's poorer quality of work, and they're also reporting that maybe their superiors or their colleagues are also noting the same. There's also people who now who now have a decreased commitment to their work. This is someone who's so passionate about something that they used to do. Some of them would even say, this was my calling, my job was a calling. And then now all of a sudden they don't care about their work, they don't care about their deadlines, and they basically just don't want to be associated with work or discussions at work. So they're also now depersonalizing, they're disassociating, and this would be some of the key indicators for me to be noting. Most of them will also report sometimes being startled all of a sudden at work, and this is not something that would happen. They'd also probably be avoiding work or work-related tasks, or even their colleagues or work events. And I think those are the key indicators that I would usually want to look at. For some of them, they'll also have disassociative symptoms. And that's when now you can be able to narrow it down to the particular place, which is probably the work environment.
Okay, and not everyone gets traumatized. There are people who are very hardy. So who's more likely to get traumatized, and what determines whether one is traumatized or not? And this anyone can take a stab at this. Not in Kenya, we would say these are the softies, but we know for sure that's just ableism speaking. But who is more likely to be traumatized at work?
I will take a run before the professionals take it over. Yes, it's true that not everyone gets traumatized by the same events, and therefore, or even gets stressed from the same triggers. So it's important for us to actually appreciate however little the subject appears to you as the person who is observing a colleague, or has been a colleague has brought attention to the challenges. You do not dismiss them because you say that's a non-issue. You shouldn't get worried about, for example, job security. You shouldn't get worked up because you do not know the status of your contract signing or something like that. Or people who condone bullying, for example, can be very dismissive of others who are taking a toll from this kind of acts. So I know that there are people who are pretty solid, or rather pretty strong, and are not able to buckle up because of these kind of scenarios. But I don't know, I cannot have a very scientific reason as to why certain people have high tolerance to these stressors or trauma triggers. And I'll let my colleagues also to chip in a little bit.
Joanne, go ahead.
So I would say that a person's entire life contributes to how they react or respond to different issues in life. So I like using the example of, say, a single mom or a single dad who has children they're raising and requires stability in their workplace to be able to provide for those who are dependent on that person at home. Now, that's a person who maybe the home front is not very stable, and therefore they're fragile, and anything that may happen in the workplace tends to land differently from a person who is financially stable, mentally stable, has all the support, whether it's physical or financial or cultural or whatever kind of support a person needs, because no man is an island. So in a workplace, if a person is not getting the support and understanding that they need, and the workplace is not conducive for them to show up as their true self, as their authentic self, then they are more than likely bound to suffer some of these traumas we are talking about. So let's say there's a reorganization, as Tom was speaking about, like if a contract is ending, a person who is financially secure and who has all the support is going to be able to process that information more easily than a person who might not have all the support and the resources that they need in the event of a single parent with kids or whatever. So when we look at different aspects of a human being's life, then those are the things that may contribute to a person being able to endure the trauma in a workplace or any other place. Then from a psychological perspective, what happened to a person in the first 7 years of life, age 0 to 7, when your prefrontal cortex was actually when you were, I call this the child self. It is the container for all our emotions. It is the time we record how to be or not to be as human beings. So that period of time affects who you become as a person going forward. So if you were born in a traumatic environment, your chances of resiliency are lower than a person who did not endure traumatic events during that time. Now, does that mean that you cannot heal from that? No, you can. However, it depends on what kind of support and resources you have encountered throughout your life. So for me as a coach and as a HR practitioner, I look at it from a two-dimensional perspective, meaning that we are bringing our childhood trauma, our unresolved childhood trauma into the workplace. We are bringing our lack of emotional intelligence into the workplace. And because of that, we are hurting and harming those we work with by reacting to life instead of responding to life.
And Joanne, you can also comment on complex grief, because all these griefs, there's something you sent me on text. I always wrote, like we are all walking. What did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. Just
so every stage of a human being's life has compounding grief. So when you leave your toddlerhood and go into your school age, you're internally grieving, living this secure environment where you are the center of attraction, most likely, into this environment where there's other kids who are bigger and better and all those things than you. And then as you move into different stages of life, there is grief that is unprocessed. And therefore, many of us walk around with compounded grief that we don't process. And therefore, from a perspective of reacting, you're more than likely hurting on the inside. And therefore, that hurt is what is showing up. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with what has happened at that very moment. So maybe you are being reprimanded for doing something wrong in the workplace. A lot of us react to that kind of thing from our childhood wounding, whereby we were reprimanded at home for doing certain things. We were reprimanded at school for doing certain things. And therefore, we are bringing all that with us to the workplace instead of figuring out what is truth and fact about this very incident and how do I respond to it. And somebody's asking the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is basically not thinking about how you're going to respond to something. So if you're a person who doesn't think about what you're going to say, if the way you show up in life, we call them triggered people, or we call them, there's these people who are just so quick to react to something without hearing. They don't spend time to understand what they're being told. They're here to respond, not here to understand. Responding to life means you're present. You're not bringing your past into the present, and you're not bringing the future into the present, because bringing the future into the present means you're reacting to something that has not happened. You're operating from a place of fear, and you're basically bringing in stories and assumptions to a situation that is current. So maybe you've been told you're not performing well and you need to correct your behavior. your assumptions and your stories are, I'm going to be fired, blah, blah, blah. And so you're reacting to that instead of saying, okay, give me a strategy to do better in this place. Give me steps on how I should respond or how I should correct my performance, versus creating an assumption that the boss hates you, he always does XYZ, he's always zeroing out on you. And that may be true. However, it is also being introspective and looking at your personal behavior and taking personal responsibility for whatever it is that you're being reprimanded for. I hope that makes sense.
It makes sense. Rahab, do you have anything you want to add on what Joanne has said on the part of who gets traumatized and who doesn't? And for the people who are joining now, I'm very sorry that's on me. I sent two conflicting links out there. I'm very, very sorry, but it's gonna be on the Facebook page. So if you have the time, you can watch the beginning later. Okay, Rahab, go ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe people who are also prone to workplace trauma are people who probably have low social support. So these are people who outside their work life, they really have no one else to talk to. They really have no one else to share what they're going through at work. And they're most likely to carry whatever they experience home, and they're most likely to end up carrying work experiences home. So that usually makes you more prone. I think also something else that I have come to realize in practice that makes people more prone to workplace trauma is people who are not self-aware. And the reason I say this is your workplace, wherever you work, has a value system. And if you yourself don't know your value system, you don't know your core beliefs, you don't know your core values as an individual, then you're most likely to end up falling into the collective, like I talked about earlier. So you're not able to realize where your responsibility starts and where you're actually experiencing trauma. So to you, it'll seem normal, whereas to someone else they'll be like, no, as Posa, this I know is against my core values, this I know is against my core beliefs, and I know that this is wrong. So I'd say that's also something else. And then in part of the self-awareness, there's usually something we call frequency illusion or recency illusion. And this is the example they always give. If you think about a yellow car, or you're aware of a yellow car, you'll be seeing yellow cars more. And it's not that people are buying yellow cars more, or there are more yellow cars on the street. It's just that you're now more aware of it. Your brain is now more aware of it. So if you don't have the self-awareness, then even if the occurrence is to increase, you won't notice it. But if you're self-aware, in as much as the occurrence of something might not increase, you'll still be able to notice it. You'll notice that something is happening more often, and you'll be able to detect it, and then you'll be able to recognize and get the warning signs, and you'll be able to act accordingly. So I think those are the two major points that I wanted to bring out and add on to Joanne's.
Okay, and we'll just go to the impact, why we are addressing this kind of trauma today. I have a few slides, and I want us to start from the HR side, then we'll go to the psych side, because we know it's all the brain and all that stuff, right? But Tom, I don't know if we are able to do these studies back home. I know, because I worked for AR, you could tell. Okay, yeah, I'm allowed to say this. You could tell which when a certain company is undergoing some stress, because you could see certain symptoms, increased frequency, and the bottom line of the company is affected. But I don't know if the insurance companies or healthcare side shares this data with the HR side, and what's the impact. And I can just do this slideshow. At least in this country, we can see the cost trauma has on workplaces. You can look at that figure, and it's not Kenyan shillings, $223 billion US. And imagine almost half the the workers, and this was 2019. I'm so sure if it's done during this COVID time, like 70% of everyone almost thought of leaving the company. And then, and most of the people say it's up to the managers. So really, the managers have a big say in all this. And this is, for me, this was my take-home slide. Like what we do spills over into the world. And this is what the compounding grief, the compounding trauma. So you are traumatized as a baby, you are traumatized in school, you're traumatized at work. We are bleeding all this stuff into the world. When will it stop? So Tom, the questions that my blabbering doesn't get into it is, how are you able to assess as companies and as organizations the impact toxic workplaces have on the company bottom line and turnover and all that, all those nice things?
Well, I like the data that you've shared, Posa, and it should be a wake-up call to a lot of agencies across the globe, regardless of where they're located. Now, the problem with our context in Africa, largely, and in Kenya, is the unemployment rate. So, you know, when anyone who leaves can be replaced almost within the hour, with or without employment, then it makes it difficult for companies or agencies to even care about getting this information, this data. I do not think that it has become a critical data that organizations ask, either through their HR surveys, the exit interviews, or through the insurance companies when they give the analysis of the expenses of the expenses on the medical covers, for example. I know that medical insurance companies would send HRs what are the prevalent ailments, for example, for which your team members are largely exhausting or utilizing, but I am not sure that they do break it down in terms of even the mental pieces or the workplace induced trauma elements in those claims, because most of the agencies still do not have mechanisms in place to make sure that these are supported. How do we make sure that there are mechanisms to support our colleagues in a way that is even documented? For example, even if you give a third-party organization to reach out to your colleagues, or for them to reach out to and speak on their mental health issues that are induced at the workplace, how do you track this? Many times, guys do not track them, and therefore the data is lacking. So the unemployment rate, I would say, also impacts on the ability of companies to even embrace the actual impact of these attritions on their bottom line or even on their production. So it is something that we need to build up on and demonstrate as HR practitioners. You can start as a clique, maybe a small sector. You can start as a communication sector, for example, a marketing sector, the hotel industry, the hospitality, so to speak, or the NGO sector, and then slowly it builds into the bigger employment fabric of the nation. But as it is, I am almost certain that we do not have that kind of data floating around or being authoritatively shared within the country.
Okay. And we need to, at least let's talk about the impact on the body. And Joanne, you need to sprinkle in the HR part about data. I know we are also limited as to what we can share with HR for fear of retribution and for what on this side we call HIPAA, like privacy laws. I am entitled to privacy of my own medical record. So it's a dicey. It's good data to have, but it's dicey because we do not want to get into trouble, and we want people to seek help without being subjected, and with the right to privacy. Joanne, do you want to sprinkle on the HR side, and as well as comment on the effect it has on the brain and the rest of the body?
So I think one of the biggest issues that creates this workplace trauma is emotional unsafety in the workplace, whereby people don't feel safe, or the work environment is not safe enough for a person to talk about what they're enduring or what they're going through in an honest manner, without judgment and without retribution. And somebody had asked earlier on about the impact of workplace trauma on men. I know women, we will go and talk about it with our families, talk about it with whoever, but a man, most of the time, and Tom can piggyback on this because he's a man, men will typically shut down, and especially because from when they're very young, they are taught not to feel their emotions. They are unable to articulate what they're going through in the workplace because of fear of being labeled as weak, labeled as, in Kenya, there's all these memes going around about kwani wewe ni mama or something like that. And for those who don't speak Swahili, that is, are you a woman, or stop behaving like a woman, when a man speaks about the things that are harmful or hurting him, whether it's in the workplace, in the home, or in the environment. So creating a safe space for employees to speak about their experiences without judgment and without retribution against the bosses, against co-workers, against whoever. And we as HR practitioners have to be the leaders in that space, whereby a person comes and says they're being sexually harassed. And even men get sexually harassed by women, and they cannot go say to a HR female practitioner that Joanne is sexually harassing me, because then he's going to be the topic of discussion in meetings, and he's going to be the topic of discussion in bars and everywhere else. So when an environment is toxic and it is creating a place where a person is not emotionally safe, then those unfelt feelings become disease. So disease is dis-ease, and that becomes something that shows up in your body, whether it is heart pain, whether it is high blood pressure, all these stress-related illnesses. If you look at scientific data, it will show that a lot of people with chronic illnesses have an element of not dealing with emotions, have an element of not processing and not being safe with their emotions, whether it's from childhood to adulthood, or whether it's you've been raised in an environment where you've been allowed to be vocal, like Gen Z right now are very vocal, and they're like, I'm not taking this bullshit in this workplace, I'm out, right? And then Gen X and the generations before are like, these are spoiled brats, they don't want to work, blah blah blah. But the truth is, they are just not willing to put up with the crap the rest of us have been willing to put up with for years, and therefore we want to reprimand them for them not being willing to put up with the crap that we are bringing out here in the workplace. So a lot of it has to do with emotional safety, and then that translates to a lot of what we are seeing as mental illness. And I'm going to let Rehab talk about that because she is the psychologist. But a lot of times those things are unfelt emotions which have compounded through the years, alongside with, of course, whatever medical stuff that you want to call it. I don't have the terminology for it.
Okay, Rehab, go ahead. What's the impact on the brain and the rest of the body?
I think one of the biggest impacts is now, for some people, there's actually an increase in substance use, and you find people developing a substance use disorder or an alcohol use disorder because they have no other way to cope, and now they turn to a substance with the hope that that will take away some of the trauma that they're going through at their workplaces. And I think also one of the other effects is that now you'll have low morale amongst your employees. You've probably been in WhatsApp groups that are work related, and your manager, your boss will send something and no one wants to respond just because you don't have the motivation to do so, you don't have the morale to do so, and you're basically just trying to avoid it. And I'd also want to add, maybe sometimes now you find more and more people being apathetic. They just don't care what happens at the workplace. You've heard of people who say, at this point, I don't care if I'm fired or not. And this is the effects of some of the things that they're going through at work. And it's real. So that together with other things like depression and anxiety will start manifesting in people who have never had symptoms until they start working in a certain organization or in a certain or undergo certain stressors at work. That could be one of the effects. I think in terms of the brain is, usually we talk about the nature of the brain and the neuroplasticity of it. And sometimes what we don't talk about is the negative effect that can come with, because now you're being put in an environment that's not helping you thrive. So even your connections between your nervous system and your brain, the neurons are no longer trying to be better. They're no longer trying to adapt. They're no longer trying to compete and be better. Now it's almost like you're shrinking, and this has an effect on your brain. And basically the structure of it. So the structural plasticity is also affected. And this will not happen over time. This happens, it's a process. It's not an event. So it's you being in an environment where you're not able to thrive, where the experiences and the memories that you're making have a negative impact on you, and then it will manifest itself that way. And I think also fear is one of the effects of being in a traumatic work environment. These are people who you'll see walking in the corridor or will be alone in an office, and someone walks in and they're so easily startled, and you really can't explain why, but they're usually on edge. They don't want to talk in meetings. If they're asked to do something, they want to avoid the task completely. If they can delegate it, they'll delegate it. And then now it starts manifesting into what you and Tom had talked about now, the physical symptoms. It's the headaches, it's the stomach ache, it's the cramps, it's even chest pains for some people. And these are the effects that people will report most often. And then I think now when it gets to very severe, when it becomes severe is now when someone is actually experiencing PTSD because of the place where they work. So they're triggered, they have flashbacks, even when they're not at work. You find them talking about work. There's a colleague who's actually said she'll have dreams about missing a deadline, even when she's at home. So there'll be recurrent dreams, there'll be flashbacks, there'll be intrusive and unpleasant thoughts that are with you even when you're outside the environment. And this is a big indicator that someone has been affected by workplace trauma.
Well, also let me just jump in a little bit to add on something that Joanna was raising about safe spaces. While it is a good idea to have a safe space where your team members can have solace, one of the things that I've also realized that impacts on the ability, particularly of the Kenyan employee, to open up to the HR is also the integrity of that HR person. Sometimes you have a HR sitting in the office who is so much of a chatterbox that they would say anything that comes into their office. It will be known within an hour. They will be speaking about it. And that also makes people bottle up the trauma that they have, which is not a good thing. So it's a call upon all of us, the HR practitioners, to show integrity, confidentiality, the ability to actually keep personal information personal and only share it for very critical administrative reasons. For example, if as a HR, I remember at some point I used to work in an agency where if we wanted to transfer staff, my director would insist that I had an input on the proposed transfers because she felt that I had information about some of the things ongoing in the employees' lives that would impact on their ability to move from one location to another. Therefore, I would simply, she didn't want disclosure. She would just tell me, do you think it would be a good idea to move POSA from here to there? And how would that impact on their lives? And I would say, at this point, let's leave her or let's leave him at this particular state. So it's important for us as practitioners to demonstrate that we have the integrity and the ability to keep confidential information as confidential as is required. The other bit also on the HR practice is we have lots of folks sitting in HR offices who are actually not even HRs, and their colleagues know that. So in a sense, you have someone from some other profession, nothing wrong with that profession they chose, but they're sitting in a wrong desk, and therefore they don't have the training and the background required for them to make sure that the office and the agency is having the appropriate structures to support traumatized colleagues. Therefore, this also ends up making the trauma remain within the agency for too long, and then the outcomes are getting out of control. The other bit that John mentioned was on how the male employees react differently from the female ones on trauma. And she's right that we are largely raised not to share our emotions, and that cuts across most of us as gentlemen. And even as a HR practitioner, I noticed that over the years, in fact, when John was speaking, I noticed that of the disclosures people have made to me as a HR sitting on the other side, most of them are women. They would tell you details about what is impacting them, and then you would counsel them or guide them to the right resource, and they'll bounce back better. But it takes a lot of probing for a male colleague to open up. You would have a lot of guesswork. You would see them, those challenges about personal hygiene, the tardiness, all the elements that show that there's something wrong in their lives, either at work or at home, but it will take a lot of probing. So it's also a call upon the male team members to feel free to open up, even if you have a female HR person in the office, because the truth also is, like in Kenya, a majority of HR personnel are females. So if you are looking for male ones to open up, it will take you a long time. But you can also open up to your colleagues within the team, your managers, and then they can help escalate some of these issues towards the right people to get you help. Okay. And just to respond, I saw a note from Dr. Hayombe, which he's asking about if employers notice that someone has faced trauma and it impacted on their ability to be promoted to a certain role, and then they missed it, and then would the employer probably consider promoting them, for example. I am not sure that is really a common practice, because the thing is, as it is right now, we do not have consequences, so to speak, of having employees get work trauma at the workplace. In some jurisdictions and countries, I think like Australia, your employees can actually get legal redress from getting the workplace trauma. But in Kenya, we don't have that. It's not very clear, and therefore it is very hard for you to demonstrate and take us to task and say, it is because of this trauma that I was not able to deliver, and now that it is managed, I now deserve a chance to the opportunity that I lost. I think it's not a common practice, and it is a good practice if it's possible, but I wouldn't say that it's something that I see happening around a lot.
Isn't it just our culture? Because just think about our exam situation. You're broken or made by your KCP or KCSE. So it's a one-time snapshot and that's it. So performance reviews are the same. And I think my friend Christine Nyamwanda asked, what was the question? My gosh. Okay. If there's any correlation between performance management and workplace trauma. And Dennis, I saw your hand up after Tom comment on that. You can ask your question. If someone could address Christine's question the correlation between performance management practices and workplace trauma?
I think that's a difficult one to answer, Posa, because is the workplace trauma, I mean, is the performance management, I guess, performance reviews, are they contributing to the trauma? It's a very slippery slope, because if your manager is the toxic one and is the one who's responsible for your workplace trauma, right, or is also responsible for creating a hostile work environment, then more than likely your performance reviews or your performance reviews will be another piece that adds to whatever trauma you're experiencing in the workplace, because more than likely they'll be unfair, more than likely they will not be kind with words and things like that, because our performance management is crucial to help employees do better, not to tear them down. But then we know there are those managers who use those performance reviews to tear down a person, because they're not brave enough to just be who they are. So they use the performance review to tear down the person and to basically just try and get the person to leave on their own without being fired, right? They're very, what do we call them? They're aggressions, undercover aggressions that create these hostile environments where a person is not feeling welcome or not feeling heard or not feeling supported. Because if you're struggling in an area, your performance review is supposed to tell you you're struggling in that area and that this is how you improve in that area. No, it shouldn't be one-dimensional where it's telling you you're not performing well, and if you don't do well by this day, you're out, right? Unless there have been some preventative and some steps that have been taken into place to help you become what you're supposed to be in that particular role.
Okay. So before Tom, I just want us to structure the next section this way. So how do we create trauma-informed workplaces? And from the HR point, that would be from way before you're employed. So pre-employment, onboarding, probation, during the work and exit interview, like all those, Tom, all those phases. Like, let me give you an example. Here in the States, when you're called for an interview, right, you're given dates, like a whole calendar, and you're asked, when can you be available? Are you able to make it here on time? In Kenya, you're told, ukuja hapa saa mbili, or no, you should be here at 8 a.m. on such and such a day. Failure to that, it's already a trauma. You're just being introduced to trauma day one. And then week one, your orientation, you find your equipment is not working, your manager is clueless, you're more qualified than that, all those things. So I just want us to structure how to have trauma-informed workplaces, even in Kenya. We have to leave this continent, we have to leave this country better for our Vininina and our Vituku. So how do we make that life easy? Pre-employment, onboarding, during probation, when you're working, and during the exit interview. So Tom, whatever you are going to say, and then start on that.
Okay, thank you. Now, I wanted to respond to the question on performance management practices and workplace trauma from, let me just check the name, from Christine. I would say that, yes, many times I've seen scenarios where performance management induces workplace trauma, particularly when you have managers who use the performance management or appraisal tool as a terrorizing tool. So where the agencies do not end up training their managers or supervisors on how to appraise performance, for example, how to make sure there are continuous conversations with colleagues, team members, and their supervisees, so that you are always having continuous improvements and you're not waiting for 360 days to launch a surprise attack on your team member. So it is about the culture of the agency. You need to make sure that the supervisors, first of all, are trained on how to undertake good performance management practices. And also their arguments against the whole performance appraisal or management process altogether. So there are also agencies that are facing that out because of some of the outcomes that are not intended and all that. So it boils down to the manager. It also boils down to the agency's practices as well as the culture. Now, in terms of how to make ourselves, our agencies to be trauma-informed, well, practices are trying to change, not only globally, but also in Kenya. For example, where I work, we don't just randomly send you a date and tell you you need to be interviewed tomorrow. You pop in or you don't get the job. I would send you a calendar, for example, and then you pick a time that works for you. If it doesn't work, I'm happy to reschedule to a time, another suitable time that is mutually agreeable. It is a good idea for all those who are involved in the recruitment phase to explore those options of giving candidates a chance to chip in on a time and a date where it is ideal for them to pop in for an interview. It would be great to give a range, send a proposal, say that we are interviewing for this position from Monday to Wednesday of this week between 8 a.m. Monday and 3 p.m. on Wednesday. What time would be ideal for you? And therefore you make the experience quite exciting for the candidate. And even in the process, because one of the other challenges people also face in interviews is where you ask questions that are really having no relevance to the interview. They are more about having the interviewer at a pedestal, a mini god, so to speak, or a deputy god. And then you are just a sinner who is just one sin away from going to hell. So they are lighting a fire on you with every question that they ask. There are many ways in which you can make interviews great for candidates. Treat the candidates with respect. Remember, they are also evaluating you as a company on their ability to actually pick you. So if we start by also treating them with decorum, giving them a chance to pick when they're able to speak to you, allowing them to also share a little bit of the background. For example, now that people are working from home, when you start an interview, for example, with a mother who has kids, and they tell you from the onset that please note that I'm working from home, I might have some babies interrupting or noises coming from the background, accommodate that in the interview process. And if it's necessary, sometimes you put a hold, let them manage the kid or the distraction, and you can even ask for an interview at another stage altogether. That way you are starting by managing the trauma way before the employee gets into your agency. And of course, even when you're getting back to them with the feedback, communicate professionally, give them, you don't have to give, it's not very practical to give all the reasons. While people think that you need to be told reasons why you're not picked for a certain role, when you're interviewing like 600 people in a month or so, these are not really very practical scenarios. So it's important to give people just an email that has closure. I find that to be critical. But when you demand that you have to be given details, that is not really, that's not necessary. But to have closure for me is critical in terms of telling them that you're not able to proceed at this point, so that they shut down and move on to the other job searches that they're involved in. Now, the other piece that we can do when your team members come on board is also to make sure that you have one-on-one conversations with your team members. Like I was saying, you don't have to wait for 365 days to launch an attack on your colleague. Have regular check-ins. Where I work and in our team, we have regular check-ins with our colleagues, supervisors, our direct reports. You have regular check-ins, which can be 1 or 2 weeks apart. And there is when you, as a team leader, you let your team member know that you're available to help them. You ask what is bothering them and provide ways in which you can support them. What you're not able to attend to, you can give promises of escalating it to the next level above you. And when you meet next, you need to show a demonstration that you actually take those things seriously. by you also reporting back on the issues that you said you're going to check with boss so-and-so. So when you have that confidence being built in you by your team member who reports to you and tell you, oh, you know, I have this kind of scenario, and then you say, like, okay, I'm not able to respond to that, or maybe not able to give a solution, but I'm going to ask Posa about that. Next week when we catch up, I will give you that feedback. So during those one-on-ones, let them know you're available. And when you are not able to help them, let them know that you're going to look into ways in which you're able to get them solutions to their challenges. Now, there's also the need for the agency when these employees are on board to also provide them avenues to ask for help. Or even provide infrastructure, for example, having rooms, quiet rooms where people can take a break to just decongest. Sometimes, you know, you can have a crazy email into your inbox, and you just want to bang the computer or slap your colleague next to you, or just go to the other guy's desk and just blow your head off. But you have a quiet room where people can be able to go and just de-escalate whatever they thought of doing. That can also be a way in which agencies can make the workplace being trauma-informed in a way. And also not making it a place of guilt, where if I see Rehab going in there twice in a month or twice in a week, I stop them by the corridor or during tea and ask them, wow, Rehab, I noticed that you use that room quite a lot. It's like it was made for you, or what is it that you're really struggling with? Don't guilt trip people who utilize those kind of resources that you provide in the agency. The other thing that we need, the other element is also about transparency. You know, one of the issues that also triggers trauma is lack of transparency, which can also stem from no proper communication channels. Channels are broken. For example, there is poor commands issues. There are also feedback problems. There's fear. There are rumors. When you're able to create an environment where there's open communications and people have feedback across the board, it's not just top down, then you're also allowing your colleagues to cross-pollinate ideas, thoughts, speak to each other, and be able to find solace within their colleagues within the agency. So it's important that we explore some of those scenarios at the workplace and see how it turns out. But I believe that in the end of it all, some of these very small practices, they don't include so much investment, but just the duty of care. Once an employee sees that you have a duty of care towards them, then they also tend to open up and also feel that, okay, fine, I have someone who cares about me. I will also take care of my mental health. The other bit is also about encouraging your team members to proceed on leaves. One of the things I notice as well is you find people around who are very proud of Mimi Sendangi leave. I've not gone for leave for a long time. I have 50 days. At the end of it all, they have a burnout. They are slacking in their performance. It's very important to have a tracker that enables you pinpoint who is not proceeding on leave within your team, because they're not necessarily more productive. They're just there. You know, there are guys who are told you can't go on leave because if you go, such a thing will happen. No, if they die, their work is going to go on. So let them proceed on leave. Let them go on leave. Let them build the capacity of those who work under them so that their absence is not interfering in the workflows. So when you have a situation where you have someone who is so powerful, so to speak, that their absence requires documents to be sent to their homes, them to be followed by planes and wherever they went to sign some stuff, then it's not really nice. It's not a good practice. Allow guys to actually demand of them to build the capacity of the team members within their teams. That is a measure of leadership. So if you leave and then your team collapses, then you are a failure. You need to leave and your team continues undertaking the roles that they're supposed to do without having any fears about collapse of the processes. So those are other issues also that we can explore as agencies, and they help in building the mental well-being of the team members within the agency. So I would stop there and throw it back to the specialists to also chip in a little bit. Thank you.
Wow, Tom, is this like no, I'm just thinking I left a different Kenya than is this common practice, what you're saying, or it's just textbook material? Have I whispered nicely? Yes, yeah.
Well,
is this common practice?
Well, one thing that I would really appreciate, for example, we have an Institute of Human Resource Management in Kenya, which is a professional body, a legal professional body of HR practitioners in Kenya. It does a great job in terms of bringing the HR practitioners up to speed through a lot of trainings that are standardized. And therefore, you end up having the same kind of information cutting across practitioners in different sectors. And so we have some good uptake, I would say. Of course, I've been in the NGO sector for ages, where I see a lot of these great practices. But I do believe as well that there have been significant changes that are taking place as a result of the interventions, particularly of the high HRM, which takes, like, I think every week they have a course, they have a training, they have free ones all over the country. They have different what do I call branches all over the country, and they have these sessions that they run, which enables them to be on the same page, and people are sharing ideas. And also we have a new crop of practitioners. Remember, we have new generations of HRs in the space, and therefore they are able to bring in a new way of work and also accommodate some of the best practices that are coming about across the world.
Okay, I need to tip my friend Grace Nzula a bit more. She's always running all these HR conventions. I will buy her chai. Yes, I've been away, and I think I'm so glad that change is happening. It warms my heart. Joanne and Rahab, and Joanne, you're always in the middle because you straddle both sides. Anything to add on what Tom said? And now on the clinical side, how do you help adults cope? How do you help them bulletproof themselves from workplace trauma?
So I will add just a couple of things to what Tom said, and this is global. It's not just Kenya or the US or wherever, it's global. Because of course, these issues that we experience, while in certain areas of the globe, there are regulations and institutions that manage this and make sure that things are addressed the way they should, and bad behavior is punished or corrected. I think as human beings, because really at the end of the day, it's just human beings dealing with human beings in any capacity. We need to stop dehumanizing each other. At the basic level, we need to create spaces, whether it's at work or at home or in the community, but because we're talking about work, we want to talk about creating a space in the office or in the workplace where each human is viewed as human regardless of their position or their title. So for example, if we look at a company like Safaricom in Kenya, is one of the largest organizations there. The CEO should not be treated as a bigger or better human than the person who cleans the office. They're both human. At the base, at the bottom line, each person who is there is contributing as a human, and as long as a workplace or as an institution views all their employees as humans, then the standard of how people treat each other changes because there's no dehumanization. If the person who brings my tea in the afternoon in an office in Kenya is treated as like a human being, is not called names, is not mistreated, is not degraded, then they will do that job happily, right? So just treating humans the way you would want to be treated. And that doesn't mean if you're a horrible person and you like being treated badly, because there are people who like being treated badly. There are people who are suckers for punishment. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about just a decent human being. Be a good human being to other human beings is just the bottom line. Treat people the way you would like your grandmother or whoever you love most in this world to be treated. If you use that model in any workplace, then everybody will be treated with the respect and the kindness and the the respect and kindness that they deserve. So that's what I would add to Tom's points. And then also, I would encourage, especially those who are HR practitioners and those who are in senior level positions or who are managing others, to engage in emotional intelligence. From a coaching perspective, I say our emotions are the roadmap to everything we do at the end of the day. If you don't know how you're feeling and why you're feeling what you're feeling, then the results of your day are going to be more than likely disruptive or harmful to somebody, especially when there are negative emotions involved. That doesn't mean you shouldn't feel your negative emotions. That just means you need to know, okay, I'm angry, and when I'm angry, this is what happens in me, and I need to step away and be able to vocalize that. And then for those who are on the receiving end, if Joanne says, I'm angry and I can't do this right now, give Joanne a moment to go deal with her anger on the side. You don't have to discuss the thing that very moment. Give people the ability and the space to be human. And being human means everything human about a human, including our negative emotions, right? Because we want people to be happy-go-lucky. We want people to show up with this persona in the workplace. And it's not possible. It is just not possible. If you lost your mother last week, you're not going to be a happy-go-lucky person when you come back to work. There needs to be an environment or a space where you are allowed to be able to feel your emotions in the workplace. And also, you as a person learn how to, of course, self-regulate. So that is what I wanted to add on that. In regards to, what was your other question, Posa? I've lost track.
We've bulletproofing yourself against workplace trauma.
Emotional intelligence at the end of the day, knowing what you're feeling and why you're feeling it and what you need because you're feeling what you're feeling. I don't know that we can bulletproof ourselves because there's so many intersectionalities, right? So if I am solely dependent on this job for the well-being of my family, for them to have the basic needs a person needs to have, which is housing, clothing, education, those basic things. Me being bulletproof in a toxic environment might not be a thing that I have the luxury of having, because basically, if I speak up for myself, I may be let go because my boss has a big ego, and him being told that he's creating a hostile environment may just at some point say, this person needs to go, So I think that one has too many intersectionalities to just say it's a one size fits all for everybody. I don't think it's a one size fits all, because each person has a different reason why they're in whichever workplace they're in at the moment.
Okay, then it's because I know your hand is tired now. Just go ahead, and then Rehab, you can answer. You can take up the bulletproofing if you have a bulletproofing method. We will all be keen to hear. Dennis, go ahead.
No, let Rehab talk. I'll wait.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll wait.
Rehab, go ahead.
I think also one of the things that we also have to inculcate into our organizations as part of HR policies is also, top managers or mid-level managers just having basic knowledge on psychological first aid. What do I do when I see an employee is overreacting? What do I see if I see a colleague is overly emotional over something? What do I do if I notice a colleague has started disassociating or has started depersonalizing? What can I do in my capacity? And then the other thing is, after we've recognized the symptoms, then what? You find a lot of places, there's an open door policy, they will listen, but then what are you doing for that person after you listen? Do you have debriefing sessions? Are you able to check in with the employees? Because some people, I can tell you, even in this forum, have probably never met their HR one-on-one. And after they were employed, they submitted their documents, they're getting paid, they get their pay slip, and that's about it. So there's no provider initiated check-in, and I think sometimes that makes all the difference. I might be very shy, I might be very afraid to approach the HR, but if he's able to approach me, then sometimes that breaks all the barriers and makes me more comfortable to want to share. And I think also another thing is just appropriate referrals. You know, sometimes the HR can't handle everything. They might have the know-how, but then sometimes also just being able to refer the employees to a professional makes all the difference. And then also just including the appropriate referrals in your insurance covers. You'll find people do want to go to therapy. They know what to do when they're facing some certain symptoms or they're experiencing certain symptoms. They've recognized what's wrong, but then they'll tell you, I can't afford therapy, my insurance doesn't cover it. And that's the insurance that's provided for at work. So I feel like there's much that's going on, but I feel like there's always room for growth. And there's also avenues for referring people appropriately. I would be very keen to know how many organizations actually have an in-house psychologist and it covers therapy in part of their insurance, or has a consultant when an employee is going through something and they've presented the problem. So I feel like this will make all the difference, like I've said earlier. And I think maybe the last thing I would also want to add is, just having, in as much as you're going to work, sometimes having a place where you can debrief as colleagues makes all the difference, because you realize that you're not the only person going through whatever you're going through in the work environment. Your colleagues are going through it. And the fact that your organization is providing a platform for you to be able to share those shared experiences is half the battle. Thank you.
I think let me just address, okay, this is me, my mind wandering. So it's gonna tie in the boss mentality and the in-house psychology. So just think about it from your kindergarten days in Kenya. Your kindergarten teacher was your boss. Then you go to primary school teacher, your headmaster, headmistress was your boss. Then you go to high school, you have prefects and the principal as your bosses. You go to university, what is it called, the vice chancellor or the chancellor, this is vice chancellor. The chancellor is your boss. So there's always a boss mentality. There's someone who's unreachable. And then on the social side, you're the politicians, the church elders, the deacons, and the pastors are all bosses. They are untouchables. They can only be reached by certain people. So in workplaces, that's your CEO and your HR. It is a very weird relationship, and we view them as bosses. And it's so hard for Kenyans generally who've been brought up in the typical Kenyan way to broach that divide and talk to the HR one-on-one. And for people like me who are very loud, we were always in trouble for broaching that that divide. So it's going to be hard to address that. But I as I'm learning now, things are changing, and I hope they are changing for the best. And for the in-house psychologist, I'm not so sure about confidentiality issues. I don't know how people are able to just talk to one psychologist or two psychologists in a whole organization who are, I think I wish there was an anonymous psychologist for organizations for that particular reason. That's just me blathering, but let's go. Dennis, ask your question now. And then for the panelists, if you can touch on the questions that came from, I think from Christine, John, Yeah, Christine and John. Okay, so Dennis, go ahead.
Well, also you just, whatever you said is kind of what I wanted to say, that boss mentality issue, especially amongst people like us who went through the 844 system of education. And one thing is, the system made us to become competitive. We were trained from school to be competitive. Competition was the real thing. You have to compete for a position in that national school. You have to compete for a position at the university. You have to compete for a position at a certain job, a certain level. It's competitive. And people here, I've had people talking about performance. And this is a question I'll ask HR. There are two kinds of performance. There's the team performance and there's the individual performance. So from the HR perspective, which one has more weight than the other one, or are they the same or equal weight? Team performance and individual performance. Where should an organization put more emphasis on regarding performance of the company? Because and also, what does mentorship do? Because when you go to a job, you get a job. Where I work, when you come in, you have to be given a mentor, somebody to guide you, to take your hand and show you around. And the mentor is like somebody who's been there for a long time, and if when I've hired somebody and I'm the manager and this guy is not performing, I will talk to the mentor, what's the issue with this guy? Because he's still new. Why don't you guys work as a team? Because from what I've had people talking about here, it's creating that performance thing is like something big, because now you put all your performance, it's going to be judged by one person. That one person is going to be like God. It's going to be the boss. And if your performance is judged by one person, the boss mentality comes in. People will be focused on making the boss happy than performing the job they're supposed to do. Because you are like, hey, is my boss happy with this performance? It's not that, is whatever I'm doing, is it good for the job? Is it good for my team that I'm with? It's not about the boss. So when we have one person doing all the performance evaluation, I think it creates a toxic environment. And if it becomes too much, it ends up being slavery. And this is when somebody talked about being burned out. When you've been competing, it's always competing in your workplace. You get burned out when you're not learning anything new in your workplace, because there's nothing new you're learning. It's all about competition. You get tired. You run, you get tired. And one thing that I tell my subordinates, you have to work in a team. And when you're a team, you become like a Socrates, student of Socrates, where Socrates says, the wise one is the one who knows, he understands that he knows nothing. But if you go to a team thinking you know everything, now you're a fool. And that's what brings in competition, because everybody wants to prove that he's better. And that's create a toxic environment. And then another thing is about the interview. Somebody was saying here about going to interview, because I've done several interviews and I don't go with a list of questions. I think the best way people can do interviews, like, go for lunch. Take the guy for lunch you're interviewing, because remember, when somebody's eating, that's when he's more relaxed. That's when there's no tension. That's when he can talk with a clear mind. But when you're interviewing somebody with points, questions, that's an interview. It's not a job performance. It's like an exam. So you can't really evaluate this guy based on how does he resolve conflicts. If this guy knows how to do all this math, to calculate all these things. But I need to know, if we have conflicting ideas in the organization, how will he resolve conflicts? How will he go around it? How will, when the system fail, how will he be resilient enough to take leadership and tell guys, hey, that's how you interview person when you're relaxed, having a lunch or something, and you're just discussing. Kwa Kiswahili wanasema kupiga gumzo, ile tu, you're just, that's, I think that's the best way of interviewing people, rather than interviewing them like it's an exam they're going for and they have this set of questions they need to answer by this thing. I don't think it's good for an organization. So to end, I like one of the HR to answer my question for me, please. Which one should an organization put more emphasis on? Is it team performance or individual performance, or does it depend on the organization? Thank you.
Okay, and because we are almost at the 2-hour mark, so comments ziwe fupi sasa. Does anyone want to take Dennis's question? And also, before I forget, someone had asked about dying by suicide. It's not the correct terminology is not committing. They died by suicide. I think the debriefing that Tom and everyone on the panel mentioned would address that situation. And if an organization has structures, they should put into place structures to address such situations, so that if someone dies by suicide, I know, like, there's a radio station, someone died by suicide. I wonder how they went, died by suicide within the station, which is traumatizing to the all the colleagues. I hope they had a debriefing and they're going through therapy, and someone just talk to them. Joan would like to just go ahead and take a stab at Dennis's question as I try and synthesize all these other the chat messages.
So the question was, is there a difference, or is there a difference between an individual performer and a team performer, or does it depend? I would say it largely depends. There's so many different intersectionalities in that question, because is it a public company? Is it a small mom and pop company? And when I say mom and pop company, it's like a small family-owned business. Is it a large corporation? At the end of the day, in my personal opinion, there's no I in team. So everybody's collective performance affects the performance of the company. Because when you look at any company out there, somebody's performance affects somebody else's job, right? If I'm the delivery guy and I'm not delivering the goods on time, the production is not going to happen on time, and therefore the customers are not going to get what they're purchasing on time. So everybody's job affects another person's job. So I think the thing that we all need to consider and educate ourselves on is the effect of capitalism and patriarchy in our environment, in our workplaces, and in the world we operate in, because both of those are drivers of all things that we see in this world. So are your shareholders more important than your employees? And how is that affecting how the employees are being treated, whereby they are just there to produce so that the shareholders can be, quote unquote, get whatever shares or whatever returns that they've invested into this company for. So my perspective is that everybody's performance affects everybody's performance. And as a manager, I would like for those who manage people to remember that if your employees are not performing, that is also a reflection on you. If you're losing employees, if you're the person who is forever firing people, that also means you're not doing something right. If your company has high attrition, that means there's something wrong with the company culture, or something is not going right and people are not being treated the way they should be treated, whether it's from a perspective of pay or benefits or safety in the workplace, there is something. So again, it just boils down to introspecting and the leadership dealing with all employees at all levels as humans, because when your employees are taken care of, then your customers are taken care of, whoever your customers are. If your employees are not taken care of, that's when you have rude customer service employees, that's when you have bad delivery, that's when you have bad products. So take care of your people and your people will take care of your customers. So that's my answer to Dennis.
Okay, and just this is for me. I know. How do we address the issue of treating the customer as king and employees as peasants in this same lens? And someone else on the Facebook side has asked, how do we address narcissistic bosses? Like, if the bosses are a problem, how do we address that?
So again, it boils down to addressing humanity as humanity, whatever it is. If a person is narcissistic, there should be a place where an employee should be able to say that this person has narcissistic tendencies without being reprimanded. Now, that again goes down to HR and the integrity of the organization. And what is the integrity of the organization? It is all the leadership, it is all the people who create a safe space for a person to speak their truth. And then also treating the customer as always right. That is, in my opinion, for the lack of better words, such a bullshit idea, because we have some really horrible customers. And the customer cannot not always be right. The boss cannot always be right. The owner of the company cannot always be right, because there's no human being that is always right. So again, it boils down to all of us just being decent human beings for other human beings, right? So that's my short answer. I don't know if it's even possible, because shitty human beings will always be shitty human beings, no matter which environment you take them to. But I think it starts with self. It starts with self. We all know when we are being shitty. We all know when we are not showing up as the best version of ourselves. We know it in ourselves every single time. And therefore, us correcting our own behavior then corrects the behavior of those around us.
That's true. I think, Coach Richie, I saw your hand up, and then we will wind this down, because yeah, Kenyans have to eat. And we will wind it down with last thoughts and questions to fellow panelists. You can always skip me, but Coach Richie, if you're still on, just go ahead.
Thank you very much for this wonderful discussion that we are having on how we should relate to employees. One thing I would like to tell Dennis is there are pressure cook organizations that are highly competitive, and there are organizations that have a tendency towards collaborative and synergistic approaches to work. Have you watched The Wolf Street? What is it called?
The Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah.
Wall Street. It's a very competitive environment. And there's also organizations that promote teamwork, bonding, partnership, building alliances. So it's a question of context on how the original owners had envisioned an organization to function. Is it competition where you compete among each other, or it is an organization that promotes networking, doing together? So, of course, we cannot have an organization that purely functions on one. There must be harmony between competition, because competition is life. We can harmonize the two, competition as part of the capitalistic philosophy of getting money, and we can also promote collaborative. It's a balancing, not really balancing, and the integration of competition and integration of collaborative approaches toward how we relate to each other. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tom, go ahead. Your last thoughts and any question you have for the panelists. And this is not SDA preacher length; it's shorter than that.
I just wish to thank everyone for taking time to listen to us through this very long conversation that I hope was meaningful to all of us. The only addition that I want to put, of course, if we speak about these issues, workplace issues, we can speak actually for a whole day. So we have to cut it short. But what I want to also mention is that the agencies also need to remember their HRs. Very few organizations, actually almost none, think about even having debriefs or counseling for their HRs. As a HR person, the amount of things, the stuff that people would bring to my desk were crazy. And if you have no way of debriefing, you would snap yourself. So it is important for the agencies also to consider having somewhere where the HRs can also debrief, psychologists, all these kind of supports. And also you as guys who work in agencies, tomorrow when you go to the office, can you just ask your HR, how are you doing? Very few of us ever get anyone coming to ask us, how are you doing? Please ask your HR, how are you doing? And you'll find out that they also need those kind of support, regardless of the fact that they are the key pillar of your survival in the agency. Now, I just want also to mention something about the interviews. I see a lot of proposals about having lunches, having walk around, having dinners and all that, or coffee. I would like to mention that those are practices that actually exist, but they're not practical to do that for every candidate. They exist at the tail end of a lot of high-level interviews. The directors, the managers, they do end up having those lunch, coffee dates in a lot of the agencies that we work with. So it's not unusual for people to end up having those kind of scenarios at the interview phase. And I saw, John, also, I need to respond to you. We do really wish to have a situation where HRs are regulated by both the IHRM Act in their practices. Ideally, the Act is really trying to prescribe ways in which we can conduct ourselves in business, and also how it prescribes who can be hired as a HR. It's not very easy to implement, I believe, like any other new act, despite the fact that it's been quite a number of years old. So I'm positive that with time, we'll have the licensed practitioners that are required, and then we'll have penalties and consequences for those who condone malpractices in their offices. So I wish to thank you, everyone, John, and Rehab, as well as Porter at this point. And thank you so much.
You're welcome. Rehab, go ahead.
I think I would like to say two things, and it's also echoing what Angelina has said online. I feel like organizations have in-house doctors, so they are bound by confidentiality. So I always feel like there's room for a psychologist, and then there's also room for referrals for if you're not comfortable with seeing the in-house psychologist. I think that's something that I wanted to point out. And then the other thing is your organization might not be enabling, in as much as there's an open door policy. There are people who are still afraid. You're afraid to approach your HR. You're afraid to approach your manager with your problems. So seek help elsewhere. Don't suffer in silence as you wait for the organization to get itself in order. So seek help and ask for appropriate referrals. And then I think in conclusion, I think it's important to always know the reason why. I always tell people, for doctors and psychologists, it's always so difficult for people to seek help because they want to try everything else. If you want to build a house, you know to seek an architect. If you have a legal problem, you always go to a lawyer. But when it comes to doctors and psychologists, you want to go to Google, you want to check with your friends, you want to check with your family. So I think once you have the symptoms, once you have the warning signs, just seek help, professional help. Other than that, I think it's been a pleasure talking to everyone on the panel, to Joanne, Tom, and of course, Aswani. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Joanne, go ahead.
So thank you so much, first of all, for everybody attending. It's always awesome to have these conversations, because that means people care about the workplaces and the environments they're growing up in or living in and raising children in. I would like to add to what Rehab said in terms of seeking help. Especially as a culture, as an African culture, we have minimized the need of actually going to speak to a professional about the things we are going through. So I would say, if you're struggling at work, if you're struggling at home, if you're struggling in your relationships, seek therapy. Therapy saves lives. Those people are professional, and they will help you and guide you and give you the tools you need to be able to deal with whatever it is you're dealing with. And then from a workplace perspective, I'm going to speak from a US perspective, because that's where I am employed. I don't know if Africa has this resource. So this is specifically for those in the US. Majority of the companies out there have what they call EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program. And for those of you who are HR practitioners in Kenya or in other African countries, consider creating something like this. It is a free benefit to employees, whereby you have free access to therapists, free access to financial help, free access to tools that will help you deal with the issues that you deal with as a human being on day-to-day basis, whether it's parenting issues, marriage issues, whatever it is the issue. So take advantage of those resources. Go to your HR, ask them if you have that. In the US, most companies I know will offer through EAP, especially post-COVID, 10 free sessions with a therapist for every issue. Meaning, if you have a parenting issue, that is 10 free sessions. Then if you have a marriage issue, that is 10 free sessions. Then if you have a depression issue, that is 10 free sessions. Meaning you can have up to 50 free sessions, because it's based on a specific issue. So take advantage of those things. That is why your company is paying for benefits for you. And that is why those benefits are available. And for those of us who are in HR, tell your employees that these things actually exist, because some people just sign the dotted line and they're happy to get a job, but they don't know what resources you have as an organization for them as employees. I shared also in the chat a link to Human Systems, and it has emotions wheels. This is one of the tools that I use consistently in my coaching business, where I coach people in healing the inner child, because all of us has a child who used to be in us. And every adult was a child at one point, and that child has some wounding. And one of the biggest wounding we have is the lack of emotional intelligence. We do not know how to feel our feelings. We do not know how to name them. We never know many times how we are even feeling. So these emotions wheels help you to identify how you're feeling, whether it's a positive emotion or a negative emotion. And then there's a needs wheel that actually helps you identify what you need. So make it a practice to check in on yourself and ask yourself, how am I feeling? And then why am I feeling what I'm feeling? And what do I need based on what I'm feeling? And once you're able to do that for yourself, you're able to show up in the world, at home, at work, in your community, as a person who is self-aware. As Rehab said, self-awareness is key to how we show up as human beings in any environment we are in. And so being able to identify your emotions and how they're affecting you is key to how you show up as a human being. So thank you guys for showing up, and thank you for being willing to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for showing up. I never have last question because something's always stirring up in my head. One thing I think is HR officers need to do career talks in high school and secondary and university, just to let people understand their role. I think it will reduce the baggage you all have when these people show up in your workplaces later. The second thing is, these talks are important, especially these talks that straddle across continents, because we are making each other richer and better. The last thing I'll say is next week, we are tackling the, Isaac, I see your hand. Is it really a burning question? Because we have to respect people's time and anyway, anyone who'll stay after can listen to what you have to say. Next week, we're having a talk on religious trauma. And let me just, I'm going to share the flyer. So just share it out there with everyone. And if you have any questions on religious trauma, just let me know. However you got this link, you shall hopefully get the correct one this time. So for those who are dropping off, I know Joanne has to leave. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you very much. Joanne, and if you want to drop off, and I will stop the, yeah, if you want to drop off. Isaac, you can go ahead.
Thank you,
Isaac?
thank you very much. Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Mine is not a burning issue. Basically to say thank you. As the Vice Chair, Coast and Eastern Branch, I think it is imperative to note that we have done something which is important to the team.
A Vice Chair of what?
Sorry, I'm the Chair of Coast and Eastern Branch, IHRM Coast and Eastern Branch.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And that is why I say it's good. This is a good discussion. And I will wish the Eastern part to continue taking these trainings, online trainings here and there. And probably, I think it is also good for those who are members to earn CBD points from IHRM. I think because it's an evening forum,